He walked into the shop with nothing but a torn jacket and an unspoken challenge in his eyes. "Can I fix it for food?" The mechanics laughed, dismissing him as just another homeless man asking for charity. But then, in an instant, he did something they didn't expect. He diagnosed the problem with a $200,000 car in seconds. They couldn't believe it. How did he know? Who was this man, really? What they didn't know was that their mockery was about to unravel a shocking truth that would change everything. Stay tuned, because the truth is more unbelievable than you think. David Williams had once been a name whispered with awe in the world of motorsports. In his prime, he had commanded the racetrack, a champion with a reputation that made even the most seasoned drivers nervous. But that was before everything fell apart. Now, at 50, he walked the streets unnoticed, a man with no place to go, nothing to his name but memories of a life lost. His clothes were ragged, his hair graying, and his face weathered by time and hardship. He didn't ask for much, just a meal. When he approached the repair shop that morning, he wasn't expecting anything special. Just a chance to prove himself. Little did he know, the moment he stepped inside would change everything. The mocking laughter was already starting. But David wasn't here to beg. He was here for something much bigger, and they would soon find out. The moment David stepped into the shop, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't just the mechanics' laughter that echoed through the space. It was the contempt. The kind of look you give someone who doesn't belong. They didn't see a man with a history, a legacy, a life that once burned brightly. All they saw was an old homeless man in ragged clothes, asking for a chance. Tyler, the youngest mechanic, was the first to mock him. "What are you gonna do, Grandpa? Fix a Porsche? Is this some kind of joke?" The laughter that followed was cruel, biting. Even Marcus, the shop owner, barely looked up from his paperwork. But David didn't flinch. His eyes, sharp, calculating, focused on the Porsche 911 sitting in the corner, its hood open for days, untouched, ignored. He had seen that look before, the kind of indifference reserved for something broken, forgotten. Ignoring their jabs, David stepped closer to the car, kneeling beside it, examining the exposed engine with a precision none of the mechanics had bothered with in days. Tyler chuckled. "Look at this guy. What, you know cars now?" David didn't respond. His fingers gently traced the engine components, listening to the hum of the machine in a way that seemed unnatural. He wasn't just looking, he was listening, understanding. Then came the moment that shifted everything. The engine roared to life as Jake, the senior mechanic, tried to start it up again. The car sputtered and stalled as it had countless times before. "What's the problem?" Marcus asked, barely containing his impatience. The others stood behind him, already dismissing David as irrelevant. David looked up for the first time. "Direct injection system," he said, his voice calm but sure. "Fuel pressure sensor is failing. That's why it stalls at high revs. It's not mechanical. It's electronic." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake had spent 3 days running diagnostics, trying to figure out the issue, and yet, here was a homeless man diagnosing it in an instant. "No way," Jake muttered, "you gotta be kidding me." But it wasn't a joke. David turned back to the car, his hands steady as he gestured to the engine. "The fuel pressure sensor sends inconsistent data to the control unit. The system cuts the fuel injection as a safety precaution." His words were simple, but they carried authority, a knowledge of the car that none of them could dismiss. Tyler, still skeptical, tried to brush it off. "How do you know that? Just by listening?" David didn't answer directly. Instead, he nodded toward the diagnostics machine in the corner. "I'll prove it. Just need the tool." Tyler sneered. "You know how to use that?" David's response was simple. "I do." As he walked toward the machine, Sarah, who had been quietly watching from the back, felt a flicker of curiosity. There was something about the way David moved, the way his hands didn't tremble, the way he navigated the workshop with an ease that none of the other mechanics had. He wasn't here by accident. Tyler and Jake exchanged looks. There was a tension in the air now, one that neither of them could ignore. They had been dismissing this man, But now, there was doubt. The bet was in motion. If David could fix this Porsche, he'd get a sandwich and $20. But if he failed, the humiliation would be unbearable. David connected the diagnostic cable to the OBD port, his hands moving with purpose. The machine beeped to life, and in seconds, David had accessed the engine's management system, something none of the mechanics had even dared to try. The men were watching now, their laughter replaced by disbelief. David's eyes scanned the data on the screen. There it is, he said quietly, pointing to the error code, P0294, fuel pressure sensor out of parameters. Jake moved forward, his face draining of color. That's right, he admitted, almost in a whisper. 3 days of searching, and this guy figured it out in 5 minutes. But Marcus was still trying to hold on to his pride. Lucky guess, he muttered, clearly shaken but unwilling to admit defeat. David didn't back down. It's not a guess. It's experience. Sarah felt a chill as she watched. There was something in David's eyes, something that told her this wasn't a random coincidence. He was no fool. There was a depth to him, an expertise that couldn't be ignored. She could see the others weren't sure how to process it. They wanted to dismiss him, but they couldn't. They had to face the truth. They were wrong about him. But Marcus, ever the arrogant businessman, wasn't ready to accept it. Anyone can press buttons until they get something right, he said, trying to regain control. But David wasn't listening to him anymore. Instead, he was pointing to the BMW X5 in the corner, a car that had been sitting there for weeks. You told the customer they need a new engine, David said, his voice steady and cold. But the problem isn't the engine. It's the high-pressure fuel pump. A $1,200 part. You quoted them $15,000 for a new engine. The room fell silent. No one moved. Jake quickly ran another scan, his fingers trembling as he checked the data. The results matched David's words exactly. My God, Sarah whispered, the realization hitting her like a punch to the gut. We were going to charge the customer $14,000 more for a problem that didn't even exist. Marcus, now visibly sweating, tried to brush it off. Coincidence, he muttered. But there was no mistaking it. David knew something no one else did. And he wasn't done yet. He had only just begun to show them who he really was. But would Marcus ever learn? Or would his ego be his downfall? Let me know if you'd like any adjustments or further details. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. David stood in front of Marcus, his eyes unwavering. The mechanics were silent, unable to look away as the weight of what had just happened settled over them. The air was heavy with disbelief, with the raw sting of reality slowly sinking in. The old man they had laughed at, mocked, humiliated, dismissed, wasn't just a beggar. He was something far greater, something they could never have imagined. And Marcus was desperate to salvage whatever was left of his pride. But David wasn't done. With a slow, deliberate motion, he turned and walked toward the BMW X5. His hands moved with the kind of precision that was more surgeon than mechanic, more artist than technician. He didn't need a second glance. He already knew. He could hear the problem, feel it in his bones, in the vibrations of the car. Every movement, every word, was a reminder of just how out of his depth Marcus was. How out of his league they all were. You think I'm some kind of trickster? David's voice was quiet but firm, carrying the weight of years spent battling both his own demons and the world's indifference. This isn't luck. This isn't a fluke. His fingers hovered over the fuel lines, the pump, the wear on the components that only someone who had spent a lifetime working with high-performance machines would know. You want to play games? Fine. But I'm not here to entertain you. The mechanics watched in stunned silence as David opened the hood and pointed to the failing high-pressure pump with surgical precision. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't relying on a hunch. This was expertise. And in that moment, the humiliation they had tried to dish out seemed to swirl around them, suffocating. The sharp edge of their arrogance now felt like a lead weight. Marcus was visibly shaken, his lips tight, his pride cracking under the pressure. He tried to regain control. What the hell do you think you're doing? His voice trembled with frustration, but it was clear now that his bravado was fading. I'm not some fool who's going to be swindled by a homeless man. David didn't flinch. You don't get it, do you? This car doesn't need a new engine, Marcus. It needs someone who actually knows what they're doing. Someone who can see past the exterior, who knows how to read the signs. Someone who can fix it without overcharging the customer. Tyler and Jake shifted uncomfortably, their eyes flicking between each other, unsure whether to side with their boss or face the uncomfortable truth. David's words had shattered their perceptions, unraveling the illusion of control they had clung to. They had mocked him, laughed at him, thought they were superior. Now, they were faced with the fact that they had been nothing more than ignorant bystanders, complicit in a system that discounted people like David, like them, just because they looked different. And then, the words that hit hardest came from Sarah, who had been watching all along, her heart pounding in her chest as the truth began to settle in. We were going to charge them $14,000. For a problem that didn't even exist. The silence in the shop felt unbearable. Sarah's voice had cracked through the tension like a thunderclap, each syllable making it harder for the men to deny what was happening. The truth was too undeniable now. They had been willing to let a customer pay thousands of dollars for something that could have been fixed with a few $100. And why? Because they didn't care. Because they thought they could get away with it. Because they had no respect for anyone they deemed beneath them. David stood up straight, his hands still shaking slightly from the intensity of what he had just done. But there was no hesitation in his eyes, no shame. Only quiet resolve. Marcus took a shaky step back, glancing at his phone. He had been recording, hoping for the humiliation that would make him the star of the shop. But now, as he saw the disgust on the faces of the mechanics around him, the weight of the video, his potential viral moment, felt like a burden he wasn't prepared to carry. Before he could react, David turned to him, his eyes cold as steel. Do you really think I'm some joke, Marcus? Or do you finally see me for who I am? Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. The fight had drained from him. The camera he had been holding just a moment ago felt useless in his hands, like a relic of his failed attempts at control. The mockery he had hoped to make public had turned into his downfall. David's voice cut through the tension. You want to post this video, Marcus? Go ahead. Share it with the world. But know this, you'll be the one exposed. As Marcus stood there, paralyzed by the weight of his own arrogance, David walked toward the door, his steps steady, his back straight. The weight of everything he had endured was carried with quiet dignity. The mechanics could do nothing but watch as the man they had tried to belittle walked out of the shop, leaving them in stunned silence. Sarah followed him to the door, watching as he disappeared into the street, his shoulders hunched but his stride unbroken. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man who had just walked out had taught her something she would never forget. It wasn't about what he had done in the shop. It was about what he had endured to get there. About how, despite everything, he still held the power to change the course of their lives with a simple truth. But as Sarah turned back toward the shop, she knew this wasn't over. Marcus still had to face the fallout. And the world would soon know the truth. The next few days were nothing like Marcus had imagined. The shop, once bustling with energy and laughter, now felt suffocating. The once confident banter between the mechanics had fallen into awkward silences. No one was mocking David anymore, not after the truth had been exposed. The video, the one Marcus had intended to make a mockery of David, had gone viral, but not in the way he had hoped. It wasn't the laughable humiliation of a homeless man being exposed for trying to fix a Porsche. No, it was the story of a man, broken in so many ways, but who still had the ability to bring light to the hidden truths we all like to ignore. His expertise, his knowledge, and the humility he displayed had shaken everyone to the core. What Marcus didn't realize was that by trying to break David down, he had only helped build him up, a symbol of defiance, resilience, and a painful reminder of how society discards those who don't fit its mold. As the shop began to lose clients, and as the angry comments on social media poured in, Marcus realized the mistake he had made. It wasn't just a financial hit. His reputation, his entire career, was crumbling. But what hurt the most wasn't the loss of his business, it was the loss of his integrity. In the days that followed, Marcus received numerous calls, from potential business partners, from suppliers, even from former friends, all of them severing ties. No one wanted to be associated with someone who had publicly humiliated a person who, as it turned out, had a life far more valuable than Marcus's own. Meanwhile, David had vanished as quickly as he had appeared. No one knew where he went after that day. But the world now knew his story. His quiet dignity, his refusal to be broken even in the face of relentless mockery, became a beacon for those who had been overlooked, belittled, or ignored. His life, marked by tragic loss and an unrelenting pursuit of redemption, was a reminder of the incredible strength that exists in the most unexpected places. Sarah was the first one to track down David. She had spent the following weeks grappling with her own guilt. She had seen something in him that no one else had, a man not defined by his appearance or his current circumstances, but by his history and what he could still offer the world. Sarah had started researching, uncovering details of his past. The world champion who had fallen, not because of his talent, but because of a tragic accident that left him with nothing but his memories. The truth hit her like a wave. David Williams wasn't just any mechanic. He was a legend, someone who had given up everything after losing his family, yet still had the knowledge and wisdom to make a difference. When Sarah finally found him, he was sitting at a small cafe, alone, as if he had been waiting for her all along. "I didn't expect anyone to come looking for me," he said quietly, his voice calm yet weary. Sarah sat down beside him, guilt still heavy in her chest. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "For everything. For not speaking up sooner." David turned to her with a slight, but sad smile. "You didn't know. None of them did. But now you do. And that's what matters." But it wasn't just about Sarah. It wasn't about what she or Marcus or anyone else could or couldn't do. It was about a larger truth. A truth that had been overlooked for far too long, that the value of a person cannot be measured by their appearance or their circumstances. It's measured by their capacity to endure, to rise, and to push forward, even when the world tells them they don't belong. David's story wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a reflection of a systemic problem that still exists today. The world often looks at people like David and writes them off, labels them as failures, as people who don't matter. But those very people carry within them knowledge, wisdom, and experiences that could change the world if only given the chance. The truth is, racism isn't just about prejudice against skin color. It's about the preconceived notions that lead us to assume someone's worth based on their appearance, their clothing, or their social standing. It's about the hidden talents and untold stories we ignore because we're too quick to judge. And every time we make that mistake, we rob not only the individual of their dignity but ourselves of the chance to learn, grow, and become better. As the months went by, Marcus watched as his shop went under. The customers he thought he could easily fool, the contracts he thought would always be there, gone. What he didn't understand was that the cost of his arrogance was far higher than any loss he could incur. His reputation had been tainted, and nothing, not even money, could repair the damage he had done. David, on the other hand, found a new beginning. His legacy, once reduced to a painful memory, was now reborn. He became a symbol of second chances, of redemption, and of the strength it takes to survive even the greatest of tragedies. And when Sarah reached out to him one last time, he didn't just thank her for believing in him. He thanked her for reminding him that some wounds can only heal when we stop running from them. The story of David Williams, a man with everything to lose and nothing left to prove, isn't just his story. It's a story for anyone who has ever been judged unfairly, dismissed, or overlooked. It's a reminder that there is always more beneath the surface, always more to a person than we can see at first glance. And the question remains, how many more Davids are out there, waiting to be seen for who they truly are? How many more lives could be changed if we simply chose to look beyond the surface? David's journey doesn't end here. It never really ends. And neither does the story of prejudice and redemption. The only question is, when will we all begin to see people for who they truly are, and give them the chance they deserve?